Sometimes the whole intellectual path of a civilization can pivot on a single moment, not with a big debate or some groundbreaking new idea, but with a single dramatic act of destruction. Today, we're going to dive into a truly pivotal, and I'd say tragic, turning point in Jewish history, all sparked by the smoke rising from just one fire.
So picture this. It's the year 1233. We're in Montpellier in the south of France. In the middle of a public square, carts are being unloaded. But they aren't filled with firewood. They're filled with priceless, handwritten books and scrolls. A torch comes forward, a pyre is lit, and centuries of human thought just go up in flames.
And look, these weren't just any books. These were the works of Moses Maimonides, the great rationalist philosopher of the time. His opponents, the anti-Maimonideans, had managed to convince the authorities to condemn his work. But this wasn't just censorship. No, this was a declaration of war, an intellectual civil war that would go on to reshape Jewish thought for centuries to come.
Okay, let's really get into this. Because that fire, it wasn't the end of the fight. It was the explosive beginning. The anti-Maimonideans had won a battle, for sure, but to win the war, they knew they had to do a lot more than just burn some books. They had to seize control of the very language of faith itself.
Their main strategy was, honestly, kind of brilliant and incredibly subversive. It was all about hijacking one of the most powerful words in the religious vocabulary, a word that was the very foundation of rabbinic authority, and completely twisting its meaning.
So, the word at the center of all this, Kabbalah, which, literally just means that which is received. For hundreds of years, this meant one thing: the authoritative, legal, and Talmudic tradition. It was this unbroken chain of transmission that went all the way from the rabbis of the day back to the great academies. It meant history, it meant law, it meant reason.
And this is where you can really see their playbook. The anti-Maimonideans kept the word Kabbalah, but they basically gutted it. They hollowed it out and poured in a whole new set of ideas. So the traditional Kabbalah, the one all about historical authority and reason, was pushed aside. This new Kabbalah became a vessel for mystical lore, foreign doctrines, and a rising tide of magic and the occult.
By redefining that one word, they basically built a Trojan horse. Under the totally respectable banner of Kabbalah, all these ideas and practices that had long been seen as foreign, superstitious, even pagan, they were suddenly being smuggled into the mainstream as authentic, ancient Jewish wisdom. So what kind of stuff are we talking about here? Well, magic suddenly gets rebranded as an ancient science. Astrological medicine, the idea that your health is tied to the stars, became totally normal. And this is the really wild part. Demonology, believing in and summoning spirits, and even necromancy, the act of bringing life to idols and images, were now being actively promoted.
You can see just how deep this shift went. In this new way of thinking, reason itself became suspicious. So something like scientific medicine, it wasn't seen as a gift of human intellect anymore. No, it was recast as being arrogant, as a human effort to defy a fate that was decreed by God.
Now, a revolution like this needs a leader, right? And boy, did it find one. His name was Moses ben Nachman, better known as Ramban or Nachmanides. This guy was one of the most respected Talmudic scholars of his time, a real heavyweight. But, according to our source material, he was also the chief architect of this new occultist movement.
To really get how radical Ramban's position was, you've got to remember where Maimonides stood. For Maimonides, the world worked because of reason and natural law. He couldn't have been more clear in his writings. For him, demons, they just didn't exist, period, end of story.
And then comes Ramban with this just stunning refutation. He didn't just argue, oh, maybe demons are real. No, he claimed that the most pious men he knew of were actively practicing demonology, conjuring spirits and ordering them around. He was framing it not as a sin, but as a sign of incredible piety.
And for Ramban, this wasn't just some abstract debate. The sources tell us he actually admitted to being personally familiar with the science of magic and augury. He was basically saying, hey, I'm not just repeating stories. I know about this stuff firsthand. So with his massive reputation backing him up, Ramban basically built and rubber-stamped a whole system of occult belief. He endorsed medicine based on astrology, the reality of necromancy, so-called ancient sciences like palm reading, and of course, the power of demonology. He gave the occult an intellectual seal of approval.
But what was the cost of all this,
The victory of this new worldview, well, it came at a staggering price. The sources describe it not just as a change in belief, but as a profound, devastating civilizational loss that would echo for generations. The source we're looking at calls it what it was, a subversive movement. Its whole point and its ultimate effect was to take core concepts like tradition, law, even God, and just empty them of their original historical meaning, replacing them with mysticism and magic. And the result? An entire intellectual heritage just began to evaporate. The huge libraries of the Geonic period, the rationalist golden age of Spanish Jewry, all these works of philosophy, science, law, they just started to disappear. As this new occultism took root, the old rationalism was simply no longer copied, no longer studied, and no longer preserved. And the author of our source makes a final, absolutely chilling comparison. They say that the disappearance of this massive body of rationalist Jewish literature is a tragedy on the same level as the destruction of the Great Library of Alexandria. Just think about that. A whole world of knowledge just gone.
So, you see, it all started with a real fire, with actual books burning in a town square. But it ended with a metaphorical one that consumed an entire way of thinking. And that really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? When you set a civilization's core ideas on fire, what is it that actually rises from the ashes?